All right, matter of seconds, we're going to be joined by an incredible broadcaster. And if you know anything about me, you know I'm the kid who looks up Well, I was the kid who looked up to the broadcasters more so than the fighters. And this individual is a legend of the game, has been with ESPN since 1986. That's almost 40 years now. Voice of their college football coverage, lead play-by-play voice of their tennis coverage as well. And just a fascinating human being with a tremendous backstory. And he's been in the news as of late, also a big MMA fan as well. And so without further ado, let us say hello to the inimitable Chris Fowler, who is in studio here. I'm so excited to speak to him about everything going on in his life. There he is. Chris Fowler in studio. Who would have thunk it?
We're coming in hot?
We are coming in hot, live.
How are you, sir? Pleasure to meet you, man.
Wow.
Pleasure to meet you.
Have a seat. What an honor it is for me to be joined by you.
Oh, much respect for what you've achieved and how you've gone about it, man. It's nice to meet you.
And the same to you. Wow. I can't believe you're actually here because
I am here.
The fans of the show will know that for me, it's the broadcasters that I look up to more so than the fighters. As a kid growing up wanting to be in this business, and so I've admired you and looked up to the likes of you for so many years. So thank you so much for being here.
That's kind.
I will say, it's interesting because you're the voice of college football on ESPN, the voice of tennis. You're not usually the subject, if you will, but you've been the subject as of late, and we'll talk about why with the premiere of the segment yesterday. Is that awkward for you? Is that strange for you to be the story as opposed to be the guy talking about the stories?
Sharing was awkward. I'm not a guy that's been a sharer of deep personal stuff. I think people who knew me were really shocked when they decided I was going to go on this path with our mutual friend Rory Karp, who's the director of this feature, and we talked about it, and I decided, hey man, once in a while it's maybe okay to melt the ice and show that vulnerability and talk about stuff that you hadn't talked about or thought about in a long time, and it's been rewarding. I enjoyed the experience of getting to know my dad better. I enjoyed the feedback from people, and the feedback since the thing aired yesterday morning on SportsCenter has been really powerful, and people want to share their stories too. So sometimes when you see people open up, you don't expect them to, that can be contagious, and people can decide that, hey, maybe I'll think about sharing something, and that can be a powerful thing when collectively people start to open up about stuff that is painful or challenging.
What an unbelievable story! What an unbelievable piece! Gave me chills watching it. In short, your late father passed away when you were 16 of lung cancer. Knox Fowler, may you rest in peace.
Thank
you. You have no contact with him. Obviously, you don't find stuff about your loved ones after they pass. But here you are. I don't want to tell the story, but this is what you talk about, and I urge everyone to check it out on YouTube. It's up right now, as well as the ESPN app. You find an unbelievable piece of your father decades later, right?
40 years after he recorded these tapes while he was a cancer patient, wanted to make a book out of it, wanted to show people and tell them what it was like to be a cancer patient. Back in those days, these tapes were recorded in like 77, 78. So not many people at that point were talking about their cancer experiences. And he wanted to do that in a book, made these tapes, it's about 10 hours of content, 7 cassette tapes. Ask Claude if you don't know what a cassette tape looks like if you're young. But, to find those, we cleaned out my mom's basement after she died in a shoebox. My brother comes across these tapes, and it says, Knox oral history. And he told me about it. And I was aware at the time, vaguely as a kid, that he was doing this project, but I never listened to 1 second of the tapes. And so when Drew told me we'd found this box, I kind of thought that's what it was. Then I had to wrestle with, do I really want to dive into this, man? Do I want to hear this? And do I want to commit to a deeper understanding of all the pain he was going through and all the things that we missed out as kids? Because we didn't get much shared with us. I think now when people are hit with cancer, I think people are, in general, more transparent. The kids are kind of looped in more. They share it more openly. We didn't know what was going on with him. So I'm hearing 40 years later how tough it was for him. Him in a dark place, wondering how many pain pills would he have to take to end it, and talking about the fact that he had a death wish, and that stuff is arresting, man, to hear on a tape. And I was sitting at my mountain house. I'm kind of grew up in Colorado, sitting up there at 10,000 feet with a glass of really good bourbon at night, playing these cassettes and hearing him say these things in a voice I barely recognized, and in a manner of speaking that I didn't recognize, because he didn't speak on these tapes like he would talk to my brother and me. It was very kind of theatrical and formal, and he was trying to, he was in the theater as a director and an actor, and he was trying to make an impression on these writers who might write a book, so a fellow creative. So he's speaking in a weird way. He was always well-spoken, could always ad-lib and would use flowery language, et cetera. But the way in which he spoke on these tapes was difficult to wrap your head around. And so I waded through it, but it took a long time. And I would step away for a while, go back to it, finally decided to sit down with my brother and really listen to the toughest parts of it together while cameras are rolling. Mm. And that was a tough experience. It was very heavy. And you'll see in the feature, if you watch it, that my brother gets really emotional, and we share some moments, and we're close, but we'd never done anything like that. And I think anybody that can relate to losing a parent or even having a brother and being able to share something like that with him, it was heavy, man.
How long ago did you find the tapes?
I found the tapes about 5 years ago and began to listen to them, pretty soon after that. But like I said, I left big chunks of it unlistened to because it just got a little heavy, and the tapes just stopped. I kind of went to the end, like how does this wrap up? And it didn't wrap up. He just stopped recording, for whatever reason. Either the prognosis got too grim and he feared nothing would come of this, or he just got tired of talking about it. I don't know why, but the tapes just kind of suddenly stop. And so there is no neat bow to this. There's no resolution. People talk about closure. There's still so many questions I have about him and that I'm never going to get answered. But just going on this path and listening to the tapes created the idea to do something with it. And so Roy and I started to make this film, and I went and talked to people who were taught by him in the theater department and who were directed by him in his plays. And they said incredibly powerful stuff to me, something that any kid would want to hear said about their dad, how what he talked to them about and taught them was life-changing. They're in their 70s, and they're still thinking about and using lessons he taught them when they were in college. And to think that your dad made an impact in that way was pretty cool. I had never heard that from anybody. There was just nobody alive who I knew of, that was in contact with, to go hear this kind of stuff said about my dad. And so one of the takeaways besides the tapes was just talking to people, making connections with people who said such amazing things about him.
That first day night where you're sitting down and about to press play to listen to your father's voice for the first time in about 40 years or so, what is that like? I can't imagine what's going on internally. You haven't heard this voice. You've thought about him every day. He obviously had an impact on your life. Do you remember that feeling when you first pressed play and heard his voice? What is that like?
I was nervous about it, and that's why I had a couple drinks.
Yeah, I bet.
And I wanted to do it by myself.
Alone? Okay.
Yeah, I did it by myself in a house in Breckenridge, Colorado, which is a place that's very important to my family. My dad's ashes are at a place that's just up the road from this, and we hung out there as a family. It's super important to us as a family, this town. So I'm in this house in that place late at night, and I do press play, and I hear his voice. And the first thing he says in the first side of the tape is, this is a diary of a disease. And he launches into what he wanted to do and what he was feeling. And I kind of pause, take a couple breaths, think about this. And there was no way I was prepared for it. And I thought, man, you bit off a lot here. Like, this is something that's heavy. You don't know what you're going to hear. You don't know how you're going to react. And so that's why, which is surprising to people, I didn't just devour it all like in one sitting or even in one period of time. I kind of put them away for a while, came back to it, and because it was heavy. And once I got a sense of it, I kind of wanted to hear more, man. I went, talk to me. Say what you would have said to me had you spoken to me or my brother, and not do it in this sort of detached way. He was just speaking to a recorder so that a stranger could listen to it and make a book. And I wanted more of that connection. I wanted him to talk about me more, talk about my brother more. And a lot of it was narration of just how hellish his days were, getting chemo and radiation. Not easy to hear. But then you'd get those moments where he would talk about my brother and I, talk about my mom, and talk about what he was learning and how he was coming to all these epiphanies now that he realized that health is the only thing that matters and how time could be short. and how stuff you take for granted, we all take for granted, become really priceless when you're faced with this. And that's the kind of stuff that was more important to me to hear. What was he learning about it? And that's where the mind warp, though, this comes in, man, because I'm not a little kid listening to these tapes like soon after he died. I use my hands too much for that close.
I get.
And it's I'm like older than he was when he recorded these by 15 years.
Wow.
So I'm hearing a much younger man, but who's my father's voice that I haven't heard in 40 years, talk about what he's going through, and talk about how he came to realize that sweating the unimportant shit in life, like these petty grievances, the jealousies, the disrespect that you perceive that people gave you, and all the kind of crap that you go through in your life. Like, what does that matter in the end, right? And I was like, geez, I'm glad I didn't have to get cancer to learn those lessons, because I want to say that a lot of the things that I've lived my life by are probably informed by the fact that my dad was taken pretty young, and I learned that we're guaranteed nothing. You want to do something, go for it. Don't count on having 50, he didn't make it to 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Take a bite out of life and do it, and don't count on having unlimited time. And understand early in your life, before you're facing death, how important all that stuff is. So to hear him arrive at those lessons was cool. I just wish he'd done it earlier and didn't need to get, a lung cancer diagnosis to get there. Because, spending time in nature, taking a walk in the mountains, watching a sunrise, he talked about that in the tapes. And all that stuff was there for him his whole life, but he was buried in his work. And I can relate to a lot of that stuff, man. I inherited a lot of traits from him, being super driven, something about perfectionist when I was younger, having really high standards, settling for nothing less for myself or anybody else, could be difficult to work with. So all that stuff I could relate to, but it's an amazing thing to listen to your dad's voice from that long ago when you're older than he was and feel like, I think I can say this, you're way more evolved than he was. You're older, hopefully wiser, different life experiences, but a lot of life experience to draw upon to think, hey, you're my dad, but man, you took a long time to figure some shit out that I think is pretty obvious.
Well, I'm wondering about that because you're one of my favorite Instagram follows, because you have these videos where you're giving us this wisdom, and you do it with such a great, you know what I'm talking about, these walks that you go
Wisdom's a big word. These are just ideas.
I've heard you talk about, chasing perfection and why that's a mistake. Like a lot of it, you had one clip that actually really spoke to me because I'm a pretty anxious person for whatever reason. It comes and goes, and you have a clip where you talk about like sitting with anxiety and you don't usually get it, and your remedy for this is to be active, and clearly you're an active guy. We've seen that as well if you follow Chris on Instagram. And so I'm wondering, that's why I asked you when you heard about the tapes. Did the tapes lead to you becoming this guy that you are not just Chris the broadcaster, but you're giving us pearls of wisdom. You're giving us, these motivational little nuggets.
Oh, thank you.
And is that why? Were you not this way before hearing the tapes?
That's a good question. I've not really given that a lot of thought. I think I came to the lessons that he talked about on the tapes before listening to the tapes, just because it was evident to me that the small things in life are important, and shedding the clutter and the static in our lives, caring too much about what other people think, the opinions of strangers. I mean, those things were deeply important to him. As someone in the theater, like you live or die with the reviews, and he would just get so low when some local Illinois newspaper guy didn't like one of his plays. I get that, and that's not unusual, but it just wasn't my mindset. Like, you can't be in the business I'm in and worry so much about what strangers think,
You've never been that way?
Not to the degree that a lot of people are. I mean, I think that, I'll say this, man, I never chased fame. I never chased the spotlight. It seems weird for people not in the business, but maybe you can relate. You just go about doing the work, and it just seems like something I'm passionate about, and I'm going to do this, and I don't even know what guys in TV made when I started out doing this and wanted to do this since I'm 10 years old. I certainly didn't do it to get famous. And I think for him, he really wanted to be in the spotlight. He loved the adulation. He loved being the center of attention, whether it was in a theater or in a cocktail party. A couple of drinks and he's got people around him. He's telling stories and he's got people captivated, and he loved that. And that's fine. That's just not me. And so I saw a lot of differences. And I think that listening to the tapes probably in some way, on some level, made me more aware of the importance of sharing that kind of thing and using Instagram as a platform. I don't feel any pressure to do it regularly. I just kind of, when something comes to mind, the one you're talking about, I was just feeling anxious and I couldn't really put a reason on it. I didn't know why. So I just walked around the neighborhood, did my breathing exercises, took a cold plunge, and boom, it's gone very quickly. And I'm able to flush that out. And I think that's right. I think it's priceless, because we don't want to walk around living with anxiety and being nervous. So,
did you ever ask your mom, about these tapes? Did you know? Do you have any idea why she never said, "Hey, let's, when you're 25, when you're 35, I have this in the basement"? Do you have any idea?
You're asking all the good questions. I'm telling you, that's a question that I would love to know the answer to, because
obviously she passed,
not.
Right? I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, she passed about a dozen years ago.
Okay.
But those tapes sat in her possession for a long time.
Do you think she knew?
I think she knew what they were, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why it didn't occur to her to, even if they were too painful for her to listen to
give them to you guys.
Pass them along when Drew and I were adults, and just say, hey, guys, I don't know what you feel about this. I don't know but I have these tapes that your father recorded. I have no idea, Ariel, why she didn't share that. My mom was pretty stoic.
Okay.
She had a lovely soft side to her also, but she was from Irish German stock, and like our people, I don't complain. She didn't complain. She didn't share her own news about health scares she was going through until way down the tracks. So I don't know.
She had Alzheimer's, right?
Yes, she did eventually have Alzheimer's. She also had a breast cancer scare and other things.
Wow, okay.
And we didn't know about that at the time either. Alzheimer's was tragic, and there's no way around that.
Yeah.
But way before she was affected by dementia and Alzheimer's, there were decades when she could have told us about these tapes.
Wow, yeah.
And she could have made us aware of them. And we were just not a family, unfortunately. And in retrospect, I wish we had shared more. I should have checked in more. Hey, Mom, it's been a long time, but how are you feeling about the absence of your husband? How do you, and maybe had I asked the right questions, she might have mentioned the tapes. Had we shared more, all of us as a family, maybe I would have been aware of this a lot longer ago, and that would have been helpful. But we weren't, and it's made me think about a lot of things, about keeping cards close, about holding things in. It's never too late to sort of like melt the ice and be vulnerable and ask these questions. I wish I'd known a long time ago, and I'll never know why that she didn't share that. And she was never more open, talking about how she was grieving and what it meant to her to lose a husband, and then live for decades after that. So share
Yes.
is my message to you, because the benefits are a lot greater than the risk.
Do you remember the day your father told you he was sick?
Oh yeah. Any family that's gone through cancer understands that diagnosis day is really powerful, is maybe even for me more powerful than the day that he passed away. We sat around the dining room table, we come home from school, and he shares with us he'd gotten a phone call. But this is well after going in for a checkup, getting the tests done, waiting for the results. Finally, when it came back, there's tumors. This is serious. It's lung cancer. That's when he shared it with us. And man, it takes the air out of your lungs. I still think about it. I went back to the house where that happened in Pennsylvania. He was at the Penn State faculty at the time, and I went back to State College, Pennsylvania, when I was there covering a football game, and I went by the house, and I just stood in the street and looked at it and thought about what had happened in the living room of that house when he shared this, and how crushing that was. And your life as a family changes in a heartbeat. All of a sudden, the whole family is now living with cancer. And he was gone pretty soon after that, because it was a serious diagnosis. He needed to be treated right away. And the hospital in Colorado Springs was the place to have that done. And so we're still in school for like a couple months after this, and he's gone. And this was not an era to understand how primitive communication was back then. I mean, there were landlines, and you had one phone in the house, and it had a long cord on the kitchen wall.
Right.
And it costs money to do that. Like, it was expensive to have long distance phone calls. And so we didn't even have regular communication with him that much when he was out in Colorado getting pumped full of chemicals and radiation. And we're kind of going through the school year, having a garage sale to sell stuff so we could pack up the station wagon and move to Colorado. And this is all going on while he's out there really suffering and struggling and just desperately lonely. And that kind of stuff only came to light when I heard the tapes. And that was powerful, because I'm thinking, okay, what was I doing in 1977? And, and I tend to think of terms like that in sports. Like at 77, that was the Broncos' Orange Crush year.
Yeah.
Later that fall, they went to the Super Bowl and lost to Dallas. But that spring, we were going through all this, and then we moved to Colorado in time to watch them play football. And it's weird how that's how I mark time. But at the same time that he's going through this alone, living in his brother's house and at the hospital and just taking naps and throwing up and trying to keep food down and all the things you do as a patient, we're out there going about, junior high school year. And it was incredible to sort of listen to the tapes and imagine these kind of parallel worlds that were going on, him getting treatment and us trying to wrestle with that and just get through the school year.
By the way, I'm the exact same way. I thought you were going to say Bill Walton and the Trailblazers, because they were. I go by the NBA Finals for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that's the way my brain works.
There was also a very eventful year in the NBA.
Yes.
No, it's just, and the passage of time is a big theme in this. I feel like the years are racing now, and I'm not someone who sits around reflecting on the past. Maybe that's because my method of dealing was to kind of push it down. But I'm very much about the moment, and for better or worse, I just don't think about and live in the past at all, and I don't dwell about the future either. I think that being very present and being about the moment and trying to make the most of what each day is very much my mindset. And I've rethought that. Not that I disagree with that philosophy. I just thought, wait, I wonder if the reason why I'm that way is because to sit and think about, geez, it sucks not having a dad. Here's something that I achieved that I'm proud of, that it would have been really nice to have him see and experience and hug my neck. And I haven't dwelled on that stuff. It's not like I've been sitting here for decades missing the presence of my dad and thinking, damn, I wish he could have seen, like when I hosted game day, what that was like, or called championship games, or, he kind of did like tennis a little bit and calling Wimbledon finals. I mean, the stuff that I wonder what he would have thought of it, but I never really, that wasn't top of mind for me. And I don't know if it might have been a coping mechanism.
I wonder if the last 5 years made it top of mind, though. This experience now has made it more of a thing that you think about.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I still don't get too wistful about that, okay. But I have intellectualized it a little bit and thought about, wow, he would be really, really old if he were alive right now. But I think that stuff that I did achieve along the way, and again, it's a similar kind of thing. He always evaluated performance as a director. That's what you do. So he was very tuned into delivering for an audience and then analyzing performance. And that's obviously would have been amazing to talk to him about, hey, did you see the show? What did you think? He would have been able to see it at a level, knowing me and knowing his craft at a really deep level. It would have been interesting, and to pick his brain about choices in life. I didn't take on like a real male role model. There was no one who I felt qualified to step forward and do that. A few people make overtures, as they do, out of kindness and love, but it didn't feel right to me. So I really kind of went without a male role model or a real strong parental presence. I became super self-sufficient at a young age. and always have maintained that. But I wonder what that would have been like to have him around and involve him in some of the choices that I had to make in life.
I know you said that you wish he spoke to you more in the tapes.
Yeah.
Did he say anything about you? And if so, what? Anything about my son or my sons? And what was that like to hear?
It was very one of those things that I stopped and like I paused it to think about what he said when he talked about my reaction and my brother's reaction to these conversations when we knew something was going on because his voice didn't sound right. So it's a long distance call. He sounded beat up, and we knew how bad it might be just by listening to him. And he said, my cool, calm 14-year-old Chris handled things coolly like he always seems to do. My brother feels things more deeply, I think, or at least expresses it more deeply and kind of leads with a heart. And he reacted differently to those kind of phone calls. So it was kind of interesting to hear your dad describe you.
Yeah.
I think most people would probably describe me that way. I'm not super emotional. I don't really get rattled. You know, I don't get too high, too low. And it was interesting to hear him describe me that way. And there were moments in there where he talked about taking my brother and I to Star Wars, and he thought Star Wars was maybe the dumbest movie he had ever seen.
Yeah.
Being a theater guy and an artsy guy, he's like, this is the most moronic film, but they seem to enjoy it. And we played that tape. It's in the piece. Drew and I were laughing at it because that was very much him. And I don't know what he would have made of my career being not a sports guy at all. But I think he would have respected how I poured myself into it. And he respected the fact that I always tried to have high standards, you know, and meet those standards relentlessly, and that it really mattered deeply to me, a level of quality, you know. He would have related to that, would have been proud of that. But I wish there had been more talking to us. I think people ask me that question because, oh, wow, these must have been tapes where he knew he was dying and he wanted to talk to his sons. That's not what these were, unfortunately. I wish there had been more of that, you know. I crave that. What would you have said to me then? Maybe I could have figured things out quicker, you know, but it was more about what he was going through. And it was very much centered on him and his experience and how his experiences were affecting us, but not analyzing our personalities or how junior high was going for us. We bounced around. I was in different schools a lot, like always the new kid, and we changed locations because of his job and later his illness. So it wasn't like a lot of that stuff. And I think, to be honest, I don't know if I remember him. I'm sure he did, man, but maybe I just kind of put some of that stuff away. I'm sure he checked in on us. How you doing? How are you feeling with this stuff? Are you okay? Are you scared? But it's not like I can sit and remember vividly specific conversations. He was going through hell, and a lot of it was, as patients have to do, just that becomes all-consuming.
It's interesting that you talked about his voice, because in the clips that are in the piece, which again people can check out on YouTube right now, on the ESPN YouTube, you've posted it, and they have as well. There's one clip where he's like, "I am not afraid of death." Like it's like a proclamation. I might be.
No, he says exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like,
I'm afraid of living as an invalid, as a vegetable, as part of a human. That's one of the first things he says in the piece. It's not the first thing he says in the tapes, but it's pretty early in.
Okay. And it's just like, it's like, wow, you watch an old TV show from the 70s, they speak a little bit differently, the inflection is different, the cadence, and so I was like, was it really like that? But you're saying like he's putting on a performance to a degree as well.
I think you're right, though. Everything was more formal back then, right? Yes. And so that was part of it. He was a man of the times, but also he was in the theater, and I think he respected orators. He respected people who could deliver things with diction and use elegant language, and that's kind of what he did in these tapes for part of it. Other parts, he's completely hammered by chemicals, and he didn't maintain like the pretense of a performance. He just kind of, it's all he could do to get through, and it felt like documenting his day was really a chore. He would fall behind. You know, as anybody knows who journals knows, you should do it sort of regularly. He would fall behind like a couple weeks and then try to catch up. And you knew it was a chore to document this, and you wonder why he continued to go through with it. But
how many tapes were there?
There were 7 tapes. It was about 10 hours of content.
Wow.
These tapes were like 30, 45 minutes aside.
Was there any part of you that was sad once again, obviously decades later, but once the last word was spoken, now there's real finality, right?
Yeah.
Like when you said that you were taking your time with it, I wondered if part of you was taking your time because like you have this in the back pocket. There's new content, for lack of a better word, about your father, like fresh voice.
Yeah.
And then when it's over, it's over. Did you feel a sense of mourning again when the last word was spoken?
That's another good question. I think you're right. I think people, once you listen to every word in the tapes, then that experience for you is done, at least as a first time listener.
Right.
There's no more mystery about what he's going to say.
Right.
You know what's on them. And that's one of the reasons why I think, in retrospect, it took me a long time to listen to him. I did skip to the end, I told you, and I listened to him hoping for some kind of resolution and clarity in the last piece of the tape, and there wasn't any. And I think I mourned that. I was a little bit shaken that he didn't come to any conclusions. They just stopped. And unless he recorded more that we never found. I mean, that's possible, but more likely he just ran out of steam or the exercise became too much. And that obviously, that was heavy, and his voice kind of tails off. And for whatever reason, the recording quality is even worse. We had these digitally cleaned up. They're really old tapes in bad condition, and cassettes were not made to last a half century, right? So we had them restored, but still the quality was bad and it's wobbly. And, it was sort of like, there was no triumphant feel-good ending to this, and I think that's sort of my point. These things are complicated and they're messy, and you want to dive back in and get to know a loved one. Don't necessarily think there's going to be clean, comfortable resolution to it, so this is not a story. I mean, Roy did a beautiful film, and I think it played on Father's Day on ESPN, and we didn't want to make it murky and, a little bit of a mixed message in there. He wanted it to be kind of like, hey, this was a triumphant journey to learn more, and now I know all about him, and it's all, it's not that way. It's a little more complicated than that. And there's so many things on the tapes that aren't in the piece that we just couldn't put in, and also did not want it to be heavy, sad on top of each other, right? So we look for different kind of moments, different kind of textures within the 10 hours, but there's a lot of really dark stuff. And at the end of it, no, there wasn't a kind of a warm feeling. It was sort of, I was a little bit empty, and it was tough when I had finally exhausted all that was on the tapes, and I didn't really hear some moment of conclusion at the end.
Were you there the day he passed?
I was. Yeah.
Okay.
It was this is a powerful experience. This also isn't in the film because we just couldn't put everything in there. Rory's no hack. He knows what he's doing. He did an amazing job. But we went back to the house that we lived in when he died and where we lived when he was being treated and I was in high school. And it had been moved to a different spot, different neighborhood in town. We found this out, and
the house was moved?
Yeah, the house was up and moved.
Wow.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
It was next to a hospital. It was right next to the cancer center. And the hospital owned the house and let us live there where he was being treated. We rented it from them at not much cost. And we lived there. And then when he passed away, they decided to make a parking lot out of that space. And they moved the house. So I stood in the parking lot where the house was and looked at the view of Pikes Peak, which is out our window. Then we went back and actually got inside the house. The current owner, who's going through tough times, and wrap your head around this, is a cancer survivor.
Wow.
The same age my dad was.
Oh, geez.
When he got cancer.
Wow.
And lived in this house, and we went in this place, looked very different from when we lived there, and stood in the very room where my dad died, and some stuff came back from my brother and also for me, and just to be in that space. The room didn't feel recognizable, but the walls were the same, And my mom just came downstairs to the basement. We shared a big space in the basement in high school, and told us it was over. I just spoke to my brother about this yesterday. We spoke on Father's Day, and the day was no different than the 500 previous days where he'd been a cancer patient. We had no idea the end was coming.
Oh.
And she came down and said, hey, it's over. Your father's gone. And I don't mean to get too heavy. If this is like too much.
No, please.
I mean,
thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like she asked us, do you want to come upstairs and say goodbye to him? So we've been awakened, and shocked by this news. I mean, I think I'm in shock
Yeah.
when I hear this. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what decision to make. And we both decided not to go upstairs. And I don't know if that's the right choice. I don't know if I've been regretful of not being able to say goodbye one last time and if that would have made a difference or not. But my mom just presented it as our choice. Didn't try to sway us. Maybe I wish she would have made an attempt to say, hey, we'll all go together one last time. There was no service, open casket. We didn't do any of that stuff. There was a service, but his body wasn't there.
Okay.
And so, we never got a chance to kind of say goodbye or get that moment that some people have and want, and others don't want. But it was heavy. I think, you can relate to this if you've had someone who dies after suffering. There's a mix of emotions. There's relief on one level that their suffering is gone. There's on one level you knew could really happen, was likely to happen, maybe even. But when the finality hits you, it's heavy, man. And so I'll never forget that day. And I just there's no point in the way I view it, thinking about that day and second guessing your choice and wondering what if or had I been able to see him one last time. I just don't. I try to banish from my mind regrets about choices we make and the what ifs. I just don't think it's super productive. But that was a tough one.
I read a piece that was published in October of 2024 from the Rockford newspaper, in which there's several people who say that they feel your father's presence in the theater. It used to be Rockford College. It's now Rockford University.
You did your homework, yes, exactly.
Of course. And this is wild stuff. I'm assuming.
I'm not surprised by that, but I'm impressed anyway.
I appreciate it. You know about this.
Oh, yeah. He haunts the theater. Absolutely haunts the theater. I mean, I didn't feel a ghost when I was there, but we talked to students who at the time, right after he died and in the years since, it continues to happen again and again. First of all, if you know anything about the theater, here we are in New York, not far from Broadway. They'll tell you every Broadway theater is haunted.
Yeah.
It's just the kind of place where the personalities kind of bounce around within the walls. And I was wondering if I was going to feel his presence. He had a favorite seat. This is kind of weird. He had a favorite seat in the theater where he watched all rehearsals and all productions on the aisle, not too close, but with a great vantage point of the stage. And I asked them, do you know which seat this is? We went back and visited in March this theater, a place I hadn't walked in since I was a little kid. They said, oh, Knox's seat. Of course we know it. It stays down all the time. I said, what do you mean it stays down? Oh, yeah. We try to adjust it and fix it.
Wow.
But the seat back doesn't snap back up when it's empty. It stays in the down position. Unless you could lift it up and force it, but it wants to go down all the time. And I went and sat in the seat. In fact, the closing shot of the piece, I'm sitting in that seat looking at the stage, and hold on a second. I'm always surprised when this stuff comes up, and I don't think you can force certain things in life. You can't force visitations from another dimension, although I believe those things are real. And so I'm going in there thinking like, okay, I'm going down under the stage, the room where they say they had felt and seen him, flashes of a person going or noises. And this is the props room where the props are kept underneath the stage and in the wings. They're always kind of not center stage, but like on the periphery of the actual stage where a director might hang out. And I didn't feel him there in that way, but I certainly felt powerful feelings being there. And I wondered, have I shut myself off? Have I opened myself up through this whole experience to really going back there and thinking about him, listening to his voice? Like, will he be more of a presence in my life? Will I feel a stronger presence from him? I talked about my mom. She died much more recently, and I've felt her presence from time to time. And there's certain places that I can go in Colorado, hike up into this meadow, high in this chain of glacial lakes where we used to hike as a family, and there's a pile of white rocks that we've created where her remains are. in this very deserted place, a place that very few hikers go to, but it means a lot to our family. And I've recorded videos there, and I've sat in that space and sort of talked to her and felt her presence in a different way than my dad. And I don't know if I'm going to have another reading. I had a psychic reading, which was a very interesting experience. My wife's relatives came barging through. They have very strong personalities, New Yorkers, and they came right through and delivered some stuff. This medium based in Long Island, I think he's pretty good. There's stuff that there's no way he could have known or researched.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you could Google me. You can see what I've talked about my dad. You could get little pieces of information that could shape a reading if you wanted to fudge it. There's no way he could have known stuff about my wife's relatives and stuff about my mom and my dad that actually came through. Not as much about my dad, but I believe this to be real. I believe these things to be that there is a fuzzy barrier between the worlds. We kind of move through multiple lifetimes. And so, listen, I'd like to have a reading now and see if maybe I'm more receptive to it, or maybe the climate is different, because I will do that. I'll report back to you.
Okay. What do you think he would say about you, not making him famous here, but, we're talking about Knox Fowler. We're talking about your dad who passed, some 40 years ago. What do you think, or even before that, how long ago has it been now?
1979.
Okay, so even a little bit before that, 40 plus. What do you think he would like this? Do you think he wanted to be famous?
He wanted to be famous. He recorded these tapes. Nothing ever happened with him until now.
Yeah.
And I don't think he ever thought his voice would be heard. I think he thought his words on the page from his narration would have been out there. He hoped it would be anyway. And he wrote other kinds of scripts. And so he tried to create pieces of art that would be seen by people. And that got cut short by his death, because he wrote screenplays and TV treatments, and there was interest, and something could have happened had he lived. So I think he would be really excited that these tapes and his voice got some oxygen. People were saying how powerful it was, and that his sons got to share it. I think he would have never expected that to be in a sports network that didn't exist when he died.
Right.
ESPN wasn't born. It wasn't born until fall of '79, and he was gone by then. And the fact that none of these platforms existed when he was alive.
YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. Yeah. Hey, Dad, your tape's going to be out there someday, but it's going to be on this thing called YouTube. And let me explain what that is to you. And cable TV is so I think he'd be happy about it, Ariel. I think that the treatment that he got, I was fair, but it wasn't sugar-coated. And I think he would have respected the honesty. But I saw him as a man, imperfect as we all are, who had flaws that I recognized more deeply when I heard his words in the tape, when he shared his feelings and his where his head was. I became more aware of some character traits that you're not really aware of as a kid, and try not to judge that. I don't believe in judging harshly, but I thought, there was some narcissism there. There was a little too much concern about what strangers thought of you, seeking the spotlight. I mean, stuff that, again, I really don't relate to, but you have to be unflinching. You have to be honest about it. And I think he wouldn't have minded that at least I got to know him better, and we all have. And he acknowledged he had deep flaws too, just as I do. So I think he'd been super proud, and I think he would have been happy to have those out there. But that's maybe he'll come tell me the real answer to that. I don't know, truthfully, but I would like to think that it's better to have them out there and have people moved by them and perhaps learn something from them, and have his skills as a teacher and a director talked about. Joyce DeWitt was an actress in Three's Company who was directed by my dad when she was just out of college. She wasn't a TV star, and we reconnected with her. She was a close family friend who was very good to my family after he died, and we went out to Malibu and hung out at her hot tub, and I saw her beach house. I thought, this is the best place on earth. Malibu, someday, man. And we went to a taping of the show, and she was just a lovely person, and continues to be. But we lost track, and Rory thought it was a great idea to reconnect with her. And I had a long phone call, and it's like we never were disconnected for that long. We hit it off. I went to Santa Fe, sat down with her, and she just said some lovely things about him. And I think he would have loved the fact that this eventual TV superstar was saying that she was the best director that she'd ever worked with, TV, stage, or film. I think he would have loved the hell out of that.
Yeah, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
You said your dream of becoming a broadcaster started when you were 10.
Yeah.
Why so young?
My grandmother was a sports fan, and so my parents weren't. We got dropped off at their apartment building in Rockford, Illinois, and she was listening to Cubs games on a transistor radio in a folding chair in her backyard, scoring every game in a scorebook.
Wow.
Early football games, dropped off on Sundays, bowl of M&Ms, watching like a really primitive TV. This would have been like, I can remember like the Jets' cold Super Bowl, so late 60s, early 70s. And like the 69 collapse by the Cubs, losing to the Mets and down the stretch of a pennant race, like that was crushing as like a 7-year-old for me. And so I came to this because of her passion. And it was really the sound of crowds cheering through the speaker of a radio and a TV that hooked me. Like that was joyful. The Cubs did something good. Crowds going crazy. Blackhawks scored a goal. Here goes the organ in Chicago Stadium. And I thought, wow, there's a lot of really joyful people. I wouldn't have used the word joyful at that age, but people were happy about the same thing at the same moment. Like how great is that? Like, I still think it still chokes me up. I watch the World Cup. I watch teams win a championship. I watch the euphoria here in New York with the Knicks winning, shared by fathers and sons who never thought they'd see it. And that gets me. My grandmother wasn't alive to see the Cubs win the World Series, but when they won, wow, was she a powerful presence.
How did that affect you?
Her. Oh, my God. It just made me a mess.
Yeah.
I don't cry at sad things very easily, but I get choked up at joyful moments in sports all the time. I have to collect myself sometimes when I'm calling a game. Even talking about calling a game. Oh my God. People don't think that, I don't know why that is. I just get very choked up about people achieving their dreams or reaching the mountaintop or just, the expression of joy from them when they get there and joy from the crowd, like privilege to witness it. That for me is the power of sports. This is the collective experience that we all have, witnessing it and enjoying people who are a part of it and being able to share their experience with them. And, God, how do you not get moved by Jalen Brunson, man, whose dad played for the Knicks, whose dad made him the player that he is in large part in his formative years. Like him losing his shit when he's talking about that. That's just so much of this journey for me and the power of sports across generations. You've got kids, I don't know if you share any of that with them but that's like, not being a dad. And that was the dream for me. That's what I wanted as much as anything. And that's been the biggest heartbreak in my life is not being a parent. We went down that path as many people do. You have crushing close calls, and that's about as deep as I'll go. But, it's not being a parent, not being able to perhaps see my dad's life through the perspective of being a father myself. That's unknowable for me. I wish I'd had that rich experience, and one of the reasons why, probably I wanted to so desperately be a father would have been cool to sort of see what he was thinking and feeling, and how would I have handled things the same or differently than he did. Thankfully, he didn't have to face a cancer diagnosis specifically, but just, we all wonder about that kind of thing. I would have gained, I'm sure, much more insight on him much sooner had we had kids when we were trying to, which is, it's been a long time since that process was going on. But it's all of it's just really moving. That aspect of sports, that's what drew me to it. And it still does.
I know you don't have kids, and I was wondering if part of the reason was because of the experience that you had with your dad. But I appreciate you talking about that, and the emotion is obviously very real. I feel like you're speaking to my soul, by the way, because I'm a lifelong Knicks fan, and getting to experience this with my kids. I think my kids were sort of like in a state of shock by my reaction because I couldn't stop crying. It was uncontrollable. And so I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I will never, ever, ever, I feel like a part of my soul has been healed just getting to experience this with them. So I'm sure the guys in the back are laughing right now because I can't stop talking about the Knicks. I can't stop saying, I can't believe it happened. Even hearing you say the Knicks are champions doesn't feel real to me. And so I'm like the biggest believer in what sports can do and the happiness that it can bring to us.
I never liked the Knicks, by the way.
I heard you say that on Eisen's show, by the way, and I felt some sort of way about it.
I'm sorry.
I know. You said it was like before game 3 or 4, and I was like, come on, Chris.
Dude, I grew up a Bulls fan.
I know.
And I suffered through the years when pre-Jordan, they would come close, but not quite. And then, the Knicks were an obstacle.
Yeah.
The Knicks of Starks and Ewing and Oakley were
not a very tough obstacle because you always went through us.
They tried to beat Michael up. They tried to put him in the hospital.
Yes.
So I couldn't love the Knicks. I didn't love them in the Ewing days either. But now this group of guys, I think when you get the name on the back of the jersey and the person inside the jersey is way more important to me than the name on the front. Like, how can you not like this Knicks team with Brunson and Hart and Cat and others who just have such heart and soul? And now I don't mean to wax about the Knicks. They're really going to make your guys sit in the back.
No.
No, but never stop thinking about that moment.
Oh my God! It will stay with me forever.
Never stop thinking about that.
We went to the parade, even knowing that we weren't going to see anything, but I had to be there with them, and I wasn't going to go alone. Someone offered me 2 tickets to Game 3. I said I need 3. I can't go. I can't leave one back.
The right game to miss, by the way.
No, I went. I went to the one loss.
Oh,
the one loss. But I'll never forget the energy when they came out. So we did go. I had to, take out a second mortgage, but it was worth it.
There's nothing like New York, man. I hate to interrupt you. I was there when the Rangers clinched. The Rangers 54 years.
You were in the building.
I was in the building. 54 years since they won a Stanley Cup. Game 5, 3-1. We got this.
Yes.
Same way Knicks fans thought we got this.
That's what I was terrified of.
Please don't.
Yes.
Please, New York, don't.
I was terrified.
Got this.
I was terrified.
Because the last game is the hardest to win in a series, and the Spurs are formidable, and we've seen this before. We've seen New York teams on the brink. I'm a Jets fan or not. You've seen teams like, don't fall into that trap. Please don't think you got
I would not be sitting here if they would. I don't think I would have survived.
What if they don't come back in Game 4? What if they got to come home?
Yes.
You come back here. I mean, Game 6.
Yeah.
You got to win Game 6 here. And so I went back for the Rangers Game 7, and it was the most pressurized environment. I like the original 6 in hockey. Huge hockey fan from a young age, but I'm not a Ranger fan. But I wanted it badly. I just wanted those people to be happy.
Yeah.
I wanted the city to feel that joy. Same thing with the Knicks. I just wanted the city to have that experience. And man, the tension was kind of similar. Like the Rangers had to hold on and protect that lead, and the time isn't moving; it's frozen, and and finally get it done. And there's an explosion. There was like an orgasm in the Garden. It was insane.
54 years, 53 years, so many similarities.
It would have been cool had the Knicks, clinched it at home.
No. That whole day,
I felt like New York owned the arena in San Antonio.
The whole day, friends of mine were like, "But don't you want them to win at home?" I was like, "No, please end this.
Yeah.
We cannot go back to New York." Can I ask you, what was the call that made you the most emotional? Is there one?
My career?
Yeah. You say
you know the answer to this?
I don't.
You don't.
No, I'm asking.
No, I mean, but sometimes you do your research.
No.
I've talked about this rarely, but I have put it out there. Yeah, it was a game involving Purdue and Ohio State because it was a young cancer patient called Tyler Trent, who was this super fan who was adopted by the team, battled cancer courageously, was in very bad shape, was in Indianapolis in his house. They played Ohio State that night in West Lafayette. His dying wish was to have them win this game and be there to see it. And they were huge underdogs. Ohio State was a dominant championship team. And somehow they get him out of bed, into the car, to the game. And we see shots of him. He's just hanging on, man. He's just hanging on. And it's just one of those magical nights. I will get choked up talking about this because it's like a movie, and yet we've all seen things in sports that feel like it's a movie, but it'd be too corny if you scripted it. And only like the ultimate reality TV show, which is live sports, can bring this. And this unfolds like it would have been a corny movie if it was on film.
Wow.
And Purdue's, they can do no wrong. They blast Ohio State, and it's a party. And they wheel Tyler through the end zone to the locker room to wait for the team to come in there after this victory. And the videos are out there on YouTube about what happened when he got in there. And it was just incredibly powerful emotions. And I'm barely keeping it together. And I just said, every Boilermaker would say, Tyler, this one's for you. And it's the most powerful favorite game to call ever because it just went way beyond sports, and that goes, I've been lucky, man. A lot of amazing football games, tennis matches, people achieving the greatest of all time in their sports, achieving things that you see in front of your eyes, you documenting history. And yet it's a game that very few people who aren't Purdue fans and Ohio State fans, because they won't forget that either, remember. And that, for me, is the most powerful one.
Okay. I know you're a fan of MMA.
I am.
You were at the event in Miami just a couple months ago, right?
Yeah. First of all, combat sports for me began with boxing. Have been really important. I don't really talk about that.
You don't call it? You've never called it?
I never called it.
Yeah, how come?
And I never felt qualified. I think it's something you need to do for a long time to get right, and you need to feel it in your blood in terms of how to announce this. And Cosell calling boxing, if your viewers are young, old enough to remember that. I mean, I was young a long time ago. I saw Ali Frazier, not in person, but on a screen in the theater. And I got a chance to see a lot of great heavyweights, and the Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, Duran, Pryor, Mancini, all these brawlers, all these amazing guys who fought with such heart and bravery. Man, I saw all of that, the glory years. And I saw Tyson fight when he was 16 in a Golden Gloves event in the basement in Colorado Springs. I didn't know his name when I walked into that church. I could never forget his name when I walked out after watching him destroy two guys in under 20 seconds to win this thing. And 4 years later, was he champ at 20?
Yeah.
So this is 4 years later. He's heavyweight champion of the world, and I got a chance to see him. They're making a big deal out of this trainer of champions from Catskill, New York, and I didn't know who Customato was, but that's just, for some reason, boxing I've intersected it in weird ways. And Thunder Gotti was one of my most admired athletes, and I saw him and Mickey Ward fight in person, and I saw. I've seen Bud Crawford, other guys in recent years. So boxing for me was the first thing. I came to MMA sort of in the Iceman, Chuck Liddell, GSP era. For me, that was those guys kind of drew me to it. And in a way, when boxing was kind of fading, as we know, many MMA fans came to it because they were disenchanted with boxing, or it didn't match the previous era in their view. And so I began to get into MMA, and I have been a fan of it, but it's for those moments that it can still deliver in a way that nothing else can, And I think that you can deal with 7 totally forgettable bouts.
Yeah.
If you can stand there 12 feet from the cage and watch Max Holloway point to the center.
Were you there for that?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, man.
Knockout. I like Gaethje, but it was you had to acknowledge that you'd seen something.
So you're going to Vegas for UFC 300?
I did go.
Wow.
I have gone, and I've seen John Jones fight, and I wanted to see more, but watch him submit Cyril Gane in a heartbeat, just to see the greatness of John Jones, the goats in sports, and no matter what the sport is, to see that, and Izzy play possum in the Shock Pereira in Miami. I've seen some cool moments, man. So
you should be calling the fights.
No,
we need to hear you.
No. I'm not qualified.
Give it gravitas. Come on.
I have a complicated relationship with
I understand.
it right now.
I understand.
I know you do. I understand where you are, and I respect the integrity that you
you
do this with, because a lot of us are conflicted, But
you were there when Carlos Ulberg tore his ACL and knocked out Yuri Prochazka.
And I'm thinking I've seen a lot of stuff in sports, man.
Yes.
I've never seen a dude rip an ACL then run for a touchdown.
I know, right?
I mean, I know nobody knew at the time that was the diagnosis, but I think it's one of those guys. I'm sitting there. Chuck might have been there that night. It's oh, he's not right. That looked awful.
Yeah.
It's worse than you think it is right now. It's worse than we all know it is right now. And then you find out later what happened. So I think it could still deliver moments like that. Boxing certainly can. But I still think boxing is hard to match. Just the build up, the ring walk, and then the way that a fight can develop over 12 rounds, and it used to be 15 rounds. It's just to stand there, watch two guys just throw and deliver at the end of that on a primal level. I'm speaking to the choir. I'm sure to people listening to this.
No.
It's still powerful to me.
It's exciting because for someone like us, we're always looking for acceptance, the world of combat sports, MMA in particular. And so Chris Fowler, tennis,
come on.
college football is talking about Yuri Prochazka and Carlos. That's the way we are. It's so like
we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, again, I like moments. I like supercharged environments.
Yeah, but there are a lot of people who are like, what is this? This is, still the cockfighting stuff that we still get that.
And sometimes I wonder that too, man. I wonder that when I see something that's basically a glorified bar fight.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go there too much.
But the creme de la creme is amazing, right? Is amazing.
The creme de la creme, the skill level and what it takes to execute when somebody's trying to kill you.
Yeah.
Is
like
remarkable.
What Gaethje did to Topuria is they don't get enough credit as athletes. To go 5 minutes, 5-minute rounds is insane. The cardio, the strength, you have to deal with the takedowns. And again, we're preaching to the choir, but like
on a very moronic, simple, like stupid level, I've trained, like I have a very, but I mean, not MMA, but like boxing.
Yeah.
And I have a very small newbie sense of like, oh my God, like
you're drowning.
If people understood, if they understood what it's like to withstand, let's say it's a title like 5-minute rounds of that kind of exertion, knowing that mentally and emotionally spending energy also drains your body, right?
Yeah.
As anybody would tell you, that competes in any sport.
Under the lights, the pressure.
All of that stuff. Yeah, I mean, if you're acknowledging it, like the fear, just the anxiety that you have, that you take into that space, draining you, as well as the enormous physical toll that it takes just to get through one 5-minute round, right? And then do it again and again. Like, I'm in awe of that. And that's another reason why I respect what they do, is because it's very few people can have a true understanding of how hard that is, what that's like. You sit back there, guy's a bum. Guys, they could all think of adjectives to call him.
Yeah.
Have no clue. No clue. Unlike our friend Rory is 1-0 as a professional MMA fighter.
That's amazing. As a 40-year-old. Unbelievable. When did you get into the fitness?
Oh, I've always kind of messed with it. My wife was a fitness professional. She was on a show called Body Shaping.
Yes, I remember.
On ESPN, which was a huge flagship show on ESPN and ESPN2 for years.
Is that how you met?
We met at ESPN. We met at an ESPN Christmas party, which is one of the least romantic settings to meet, and it's a good story.
I'm sure you're not the only one.
I was sober, man. I was stone sober. I was the only one on the party sober because I came from work.
Oh, okay.
I came directly off the air to the party. Everybody else had a 4-hour head start. And we met there, and one of our first dates, maybe our first official date was the ESPYs, Radio City, which is even more pathetic. Yeah. But no, that's not why I got into fitness. I think I've always valued it, but as I gotten older and I understand the importance of mental health being tied to physical activity and also longevity, I'm kind of like fanatical about it, and it's something.
Look at this right here. Look at this right here.
Oh, come on.
Come on, look at this.
Wow, man.
How many pounds is that?
Let me see when that was. What am I saying? Wow, I think that's
not that long.
405.
405?
Yeah, I could still get 400 up on a hex bar, which is easier than on a straight deadlift bar. But
every day?
Oh, no. I backed off on that. I'm not that stupid. I've been banged up. I've had surgeries and stuff. I think you learn to train smarter, and you what I call prudent aggression. That's my approach to PT after an injury. It's my approach to training now. Is that I'm aggressive. I push myself hard, but I also have that voice where, like, certain days when you get older. I'm 63, man. So you're going to have more off days. I don't care. That starts in your 30s as an athlete. You're going to have more frequent off days, and the off days are going to be felt more deeply. In fact, affecting your performance. So now I have a lot of off days at 63, and it's not feeling right. And I think I might go deadlift later today or tomorrow because I'm feeling pretty good. But if something happens, I don't feel it, I back off. So I used to train like bro lifting was really stupid and wrecked my shoulders. I've had 4 operations on my knees and stuff like that. Had one recently in December, and they cleaned up a bunch of stuff, and I had to rehab from that. But I try to be mindful of, let's train smart. Let's not go crazy. You don't have to be a hero in there. But it's really, and I do all kinds of different stuff. I'm not just heavy lifting like that. That's a rare day when I'm actually trying to lift 400 pounds. I'm doing all kinds of stuff and using bands and mobility stuff, because that's really about, we just want to stay active, be able to move, right? Like you want to be able to, for many, many, many years, like reach out and play with your kids and your grandkids. And that right now for me, just being able to be active is like a blessing. And I do a lot of stuff with recovery, the plunge, the sauna, red light, vitamins, peptides, way into that stuff. So I'm using all the tools that are available to us to try to keep active for as long as I can.
Two last quick things, and this has been great. Thank you again.
Sure, man.
86, you get the ESPN high school show, right?
Yep.
What's the secret to staying with one place for almost 40 years? This is the antithesis of my career, and I'm envious. How do you stay in this day and age, in this media landscape, with one network for almost 40 years? What's the secret?
Hell of a question. I mean, there's plenty of times I've been envious of people who bounce around and done different things, because you wonder, what would that be like to work there or have a fresh start? The key is not the employer, it's the duties, it's the responsibilities, it's the day-to-day. And I've been really lucky because ESPN has had the championship events in my two favorite sports for a long time. So to be able to call the championship game in football since the inception of the playoff, to be able to call most years 6 Grand Slam finals per year, like nobody else even has the possibility of doing that. We have the rights to 3 of the 4 majors. And so that's been important. The people that have run the company, the people that I work with have come and gone. Relationships are important, but for me, it's about the opportunity. And ESPN has been good to me, but it's transactional. They're corporations and the people who run them are loyal to you as long as you do right for them and make them look good. That's the reality. I mean, when you're not an asset anymore, and you're not worth what they've been paying you, you're out. And I have no delusions about that. But, for me, I've had chances to go. I've had those moments where I wanted to leave for the wrong reasons. One of the things I talk about is, don't run from something, run to something better, right? Like if you have an opportunity that feels better, by all means, go for it. But if you want, I can't take another day in this place. There were times when I felt that at ESPN, for sure. Anybody, if they're being honest, would say that. But don't make a rash, knee-jerk decision unless you've got something better to run to. And how do you know if it's better? Step back, take the emotion out of it, take the ego out of it, clear the static, and listen to your gut. And that sounds trite, but that for me is life. I've made a lot of bad decisions. I've made terrible decisions in investments and a couple of relations, not in my marriage, but before that. We've all made mistakes. My batting average and professional decisions, path A or path B, is pretty good. And it's because I've been able to listen to my gut. And Ariel, honestly, people think this is bold when I say it, but like I've chosen the thing that seems the most fun. But fun for me doesn't mean easy, cushy. It means like fulfilling, challenging, opportunity for growth. And that's how I define fun. That's how I define success. And so whenever I've faced a choice, including the chance to leave ESPN, I thought, make the choice for the right reasons. And always the right reason was to stay. And that's it. But, I could have made choices for other reasons and gone somewhere else, and who knows how that would have worked out. Even going to ESPN was not a choice that people said I should make. 86, you're saying the network's 7 years old, right? And it's not the worldwide leader in anything.
Right.
And so my advisors out of school, I was young. I had a great opportunity to be on TV in Denver right out of school, which is not normal. Like, it was a top 20 market, a really good sports market. Not covering the Nuggets and Broncos, but I got my stories on the air, and I got to work in front of the camera right out of school in Denver, which is a blessing. So I put this tape together, go to ESPN, and when they came back and said, "Hey, listen, we want to come to Bristol," I thought, SportsCenter. No. Taped show, high school sports. I mean, who was I kidding? I looked 11. Like, I would have been comical. Like, the very first shot of this feature we've been talking about is me on Scholastic Sports America in 86 in a little sweater, looking like a kid who was in high school, covering high school sports. And they weren't going to put me on SportsCenter. They're going to put me on this taped show, a magazine-style show where I had to do a lot of work. Go on the road, field produce the thing, write it, edit it with an editor, pushing the buttons, but I had to pick the shots. I mean, it's incredible that I had that kind of responsibility so soon out of school. That's what I meant about challenging and an opportunity to grow. And as opposed to reading scores at a local market, I'm not disparaging that. It just wasn't for me at a young age, and I knew it. Thank God I knew early what I didn't want to do. Way more important than knowing what you want to do is knowing what doesn't feel right to you. Like I don't want my days to look like that. I want something else. And so I said yes to ESPN and no to what my advisors and professors were telling me to do, which is to follow a very conventional path. Then at ESPN, they wanted me to leave that show and go to the West Coast and be an LA bureau guy. Create this position. They never had it. Never had a guy on the West Coast cover, Dodgers, Lakers, football. And they wanted me to go do that. They figured what young single guy wouldn't want to leave Bristol, go to LA, and cover pro sports and college sports when I was covering high school sports. But it just felt, for some reason, it just felt off to me, like this wasn't what I wanted to do, to leave headquarters, be a one-man band out in the West Coast, and go chase highlights and sound bites after a Laker game. And I stayed there to do another year of the high school show, I thought. And they came to me a month later and said, how about college football? How about do features for this new show called Game Day and do sidelines for our games? And that instant yes. Like it just felt right instantly. I wanted to be part of live productions. And thank God I did, man. Those two choices, had I made different choices, no way we're talking, no way I've had the career I've had. And very easily, the logical thing was to leave and change course. So that's what I'm saying. My message to all young people is, first of all, like yourself well enough to know yourself well and be honest with yourself so that when you face a choice, you can trust your inner voice by tuning out the static. Because people who love you and know more than you don't necessarily know what's best for you, right? Like they can't make decisions for you. They can just do what they would do if they were in your position or what they think might be best for you. Only you know in your gut. Doesn't mean ignore parents. I'm not saying that. I just feel like had I listened to the quote experts, I would have had a totally different path and never ended up with as enriching experience as I did. And that's been true numerous times since then. Screwed up many other decisions, but I think on this path, just leaving Game Day wasn't easy. 25 years felt like a good round number, but leaving that show, which you get few chances in life to build something brick by brick from scratch, and that's kind of what we did with Game Day. And it was it was not a coveted gig when I got it as a young guy. No one wanted to. What was this show? I said, what? Yeah. Studio, college football, leading into Ivy League games. Man, SportsCenter is where it's at, or other things were much more highly coveted than Game Day. But that became something. So to leave that show wasn't easy, but being able to do what I do now, which is, call the biggest games in the sports, what I want to do since I'm that 10-year-old kid. So that wasn't as hard a choice, but is just in one of those moments in life where you have to sort of trust yourself.
These are the kinds of wisdom nuggets that you get if you follow Chris on Instagram. Last one for you. And I was thinking about this a lot with Mike Breen, knowing what the Knicks meant to him. And I know broadcasters have been asked this question. I think he was as well. Like, do you think of that final call? Do you prepare that final call? What are you going to say if it happens, right? And so we find out very recently Serena Williams is going to be a part of Wimbledon, right? She's going to be a wild card. Do you allow if she goes on a magical run, could you imagine what it would be like if she could do so? Do you plan any of these calls? Do you think about these calls in the shower, in bed? You say, what would I say if Serena goes on a magical run and wins this all over again? Do you do any of that ever before a big game, or are you spur of the moment, don't think about it?
Now you got to be thinking about what if Serena wins 7 matches at Wimbledon?
Did you
no, I mean,
imagine?
She's 44. I mean, she's
Could
already.
You imagine, Chris? And then we're going to play this clip.
Now
the Knicks won the championship. Anything can happen.
To answer your question, no, I don't think about that in advance. Okay. At least not well in advance. I mean, I think sometimes if you're walking down to Wimbledon Center Court and it's the day of the final and Andy Murray is trying to end a 7-decade drought at British champions, or Federer's trying to break somebody's record, or Novak's trying to win in his late 30s, or Alcaraz trying to break through, you don't necessarily think, what would I say? But you're thinking like, what would that feel like? What would be the proper way to document it? But then the game unfolds differently. The match unfolds differently. And what good would it have been to like think of a way to frame it and then have that not be authentic to what you just saw for the last 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever it is. Like, I got a chance to call Federer and Nadal and Djokovic and Serena winning lots of championships. All of them were different. All of them had a different texture and require like something different to say in the moment. Now, Mike's a friend. To have him be able to chronicle the Knicks winning a championship after seeing so much bad basketball, as you know well, for a lot of years, and be the voice who gets to call the finals, whoever's in it.
Right.
But now it's New York, and you never expected this run when the playoffs began, right? So I know that Mike felt those emotions deeply, and yet was a total pro in the moment. He said, "Go ahead and cry, Knicks fans." I listened to it in Slovenia, by the way. I was in Europe when it happened. Not live, unfortunately. I didn't get to hear him call it live because of all the NBA rights stuff. You can't listen to the ESPN app in Europe. Other people bought the rights, and so I'm hearing some crazy guy in a language I can't begin to understand. Go, oh yo, Brunson Burner. But to hear Mike's call back when I got up in the morning, as I hear it after the fact, I thought, man, that's just perfect. It's so human. Go ahead and cry, because that's exactly. Now, he was doing it to Knicks fans.
Yeah.
He was being personal there, which is a little different. Like you don't normally, when you call a team winning, you don't say, hey, Indiana fans.
Yep.
Go ahead and cry. That's not usually, wouldn't be my instinct, but I think I said it was similar, like the unthinkable.
Yeah.
In Indiana?
Yeah.
I said, a century of futility is forgotten. Now, I didn't rehearse that line, but I thought about, like, they've sucked for 100 years. So what would it mean for them to be the first 16-0 team in the modern era, to go into Miami and win on the other team's home field, to cap this season when nobody gave them a chance? It is a movie that's a better movie than the Hoosiers movie, but high school hoops. So you don't sit there and think, okay, I got to rise to it, or I got to come up with some scripted line. But what frames it is they've sucked for a long time, and now it's their moment. So if you think about things like that, then hopefully it comes to you. There's all kind of examples. I could bore the hell out of you with this because it's pretty granular, the art of doing this. And
I love this
we all listen to people that, that was in the shower.
Yeah.
Or fed to him by someone, or he really thought about that one, for a while. And I'm not going to name, but it doesn't feel right to my ears, and maybe to somebody's ears. It's just better when it comes to you, because it's more authentic. You know what I mean? And you also have the chance. Not everything that you document is like this magical moment that sports fans will remember and reflect on forever, like Barbora Krejcikova winning Wimbledon isn't going to live in the consciousness of tennis fans. It's going to be a huge moment for her and her family. So you don't try to you don't try to shoot for the moon, because I know who our audience is. But if Serena wins at 44, knowing the army of like ardent fans and admirers that she has, and how remarkable that would be. I mean, let's not even put that out there, because that's beyond far-fetched.
Sure.
It'd be very cool if she wins a match, frankly. I'm sorry, Serena. Love you. But like, it's a hard thing to do when you've been out of tennis. I mean, the last major she won, she was pregnant. It's been a long time. It's been 19.
Yeah.
And
has it been that long?
17, actually. She hasn't been in a Grand Slam final, I think, since 19.
Wow.
It's been a long time since she's been at the highest level and trying to win a major. Now, Wimbledon is her place, but I mean, when Alcaraz broke through, that you think about, okay, I got to call him winning his first U.S. Open. I got to call him winning a couple Wimbledons. It's like things come to mind, like he's I said when he beat Djokovic, I just said, what came to me was that Carlos Alcaraz is the special one to dethrone Djokovic at Wimbledon. He hadn't lost in center court in like 10 years. I mean, and that he had won an Open, but to win on that court against Novak and to do it the way he did it. What came to me was like he is to try to recognize he didn't just win this trophy. He announced himself as truly like a transcendent player. You know, and I'll admit when Djokovic is going for the Grand Slam here in New York, you start to think about that. Okay, it's winning all 4 majors in the same year if you don't know what that means. And it hadn't been done forever in men's tennis. Rod Laver in the late 60s, right? And about 3 times in history. So like, okay, this is the ultimate lightning bolt. Serena went for the same thing, went for a calendar Grand Slam and came up short. So you'd think like, what would this mean? What would make sense to say to document it? And I never get a chance because he got beat.
Yeah.
So.
I love this stuff. What a delight. What an absolute delight. If you go on YouTube right now, type in Chris Fowler father, it'll come up Finding My Father, I believe it's called. There it is. There's the great thumbnail that will pop up.
My dad's face is on your show, man. Yeah. What is Yahoo? He had no idea, but here he is. Right
many more important places. Rory's a tremendous guy. He's been very kind to me, so I was so excited when I heard he was working with you on this and when he approached us to have you on. Really a huge honor, so congratulations.
I'm glad he put us together, man. It's one of the many great things he's done. So, I appreciate the experience. I continue to admire what you do, man.
Thank you, Chris.
Do it again.
All the best. Good luck at Wimbledon. Can't wait to watch you over there. And good luck with the upcoming college football season and everything that you're doing. Thank you so much. And congrats on a great piece. I'm sure somewhere, maybe in that theater in Illinois, your father is very proud. He is Chris Fowler. We'll say goodbye to him. Come back with news and notes. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up. Leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.